Okay, so I had a question from a viewer about how much of a challenge this becomes focusing and so forth if you're using this and having to use the touch screen. If you keep it away from you, it's not a problem. Always you want to think about like a wheelbase on a car. The wider apart and longer wheelbase you have from front to back, the occupants will have a smoother ride. So if you keep this fairly centered between your endpoints, this will be a bit more stable. So then you have to compensate for, can you see up close? And if not, you've got to wear these spectacles, these darn spectacle things. So if you weren't using the follow focus, then yeah, it becomes a little bothersome, but it's not terrible. I'll switch the other lens on here in a little bit so you get an idea. Because right now, I'll use the follow focus here. In fact, I'll train it upon my, there we go. So this is the, by the way, this is the makinon 28mm. Got it for $12, this lens. So, and you can see it does it's a nice job. And we're gonna get me over here, take a gander at this, switching the focus. So going back from one to the next, switching back and forth is not a problem. What I tend to do for this is I'll move this up here. That way I can focus this way while maintaining stability. That way I can do rack focus, you know, pull up from something really close, boom, too close, to something further away and nail the focus on that and maintain stability. So I tend to have that on there. Switch this off for a second. And being left-handed, this kind of works for me. But I tend to use the regular focus with the right hand when I'm actually doing it manually. But we're going to use this lens a little bit more today. And that is, believe it or not, just this little segment. So this is the adapter. Takes a Minolta mount, so it's a Minolta adapter, and that's like a $19 piece. And then it's a $12 lens from there to there. The rest is the step-up rings into the SLR Magic variable ND filter. And I had to modify this a little bit because with this in here, raising this up, it was hitting the lens end there. So I had to put on a double thread design or tread design. So for gear, basically, for turning there are other options that space that out, but I didn't have any on hand, so that's why I had to use that. But I'm also testing today both of these different mics, and the Rode video mic and the Techstar. And the Techstar actually is a pretty good mic, so you get to hear that in a separate review for those people who are interested in something that's really inexpensive. It's like $25, $28, something like that. So I'm going to switch the other lens on so then we can actually work on using the screen for focus and see how that works. To pull off all the components required. So basically all I'm going to do is reduce this, pull that down. What I like to make sure of is that I don't have wind coming in to hit the sensor on the camera. So I get my red lined up first and get it ready to go and make that as quick as possible. Especially in environments where you have insects and things like that. You don't want to have to play with those. Now, because we're going to work this manually, I'm going to just leave this on here It's a 1.7 lens, so 1.7 aperture. So I will need the rest of this. And let me take that off. Put that on there temporarily. And we're in the same boat with this bugger. Since I don't need the manual, I'm going to move that out of the way. There we go. Now, the one thing I do have to mention that the makinon has it produces a beautiful image, but its lens elements are pretty close to the edge here, and so that means it doesn't have all the coatings too that the newer lenses do, and so it will pick up, it'll wash out your scene because any reflected light and so forth from like above, especially light sources, lamps and things like that, you definitely need to have like all these step-up rings or even a matte box on the end to capitalize on that really good image. Otherwise you get softening in your across the scene. It'll make it less contrasty noticeably, so you want to make sure that that's taken care of. So the key on this is a fly-by-wire. So fly-by-wire means that the computer inside here takes note of the electronic variance signal that basically, when you rotate this, tells the computer to engage the motor inside there to turn the lens into focus or out of focus. So it slides them forward and back. The ability to go, whipping it from one end to the other, you can kind of get you can work it to where you can get rack focus fairly closely, but it's not like a manual lens. A manual lens has hard stops as far as it's when you need focus. I mean, it will go to the end and that's it. Here, we'll pull this off. Hard stop, and everything in between is accurate. So when it's on 0.5, you get 0.5 every single time you turn that. If you go to 0.4 or 13 or 12, depends on what you're looking at here. But when I turn to those measurements, you get that exactly every single time you turn to that point. That's not the same with a fly-by-wire. Fly-by-wire is, you can turn it, and it, depending on whether you go slow or fast, will determine how much it actually pulls it into focus or not. So sometimes if you're going nice and slow, you can kind of get a good, pull in. But then if you go a little faster, it'll shoot past where you thought it was originally. And so that's why you have to rely on the autofocusing mechanism on the screen a little bit more. Lock down your shot, move around, and if you change views and so forth, or position to your subject, you then, either make another shot or you have to really train yourself to make sure that this is accurate on your movement. Now I have the other lens on, so we've got it's a 50mm equivalent. Yeah, everybody has to say that. It's a 25mm micro four thirds lens, and it's kind of my mainstay. It's a pretty good lens. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some photo here, some video. And one of the things you'll notice is that as I'm focusing, let's say we'll focus on the tree for a bit here, I can hit the autofocus. That's going to lock it in. This lens does that pretty quickly. It does it pretty accurately, so depending where I go, there we go, we've got that in play nice and tight. Go back to here, puts that in focus, go to the grass and so forth. It does a really quick job, and the only thing that's important is any fine tuning. And fine tuning is hitting the little magnifying lens here. So if I wanted to go up to this, I hit the magnifying lens. I can do this first to make sure it's in sharp focus, and then I'll go with, by hand, just to make sure that it is where I want it to be. And yeah, it's there. So again, I would do that more for shoots where I really need to, like some of our short films, essentially I need to make sure that each scene is rock solid on focus, unless it's specifically intended not to be for the story. This particular lens does a really good job of being able to press the button up here. I do that preferable to pressing and holding here. This, for me, that extra half second, it used to be when the very first revision came out, is you just touch it once and it would enact the focus, but then I guess people had a problem with that. So you have to actually hold it. And while that doesn't seem like a lot, I can just hold it like that, or I can just press that button. I press the button and it's tenths of a second, but if you like pressing the screen, then it goes from here to here, and that's the thing that you would be going over with on your filming. Or I simply use my other hand here, so this is like a cross posting, so that'll hold here, and I'll do my focus like on the tree, and if I needed to rack focus, I'll pull it into that, rack focus back out, rack it in. They are not always the easiest thing. There we go. Back out, back in. Takes a little bit. I'm actually more used to the 20 millimeter. So each one has a fly-by-wire characteristics that's slightly different than the other one. So I don't have this one locked down. Yeah, I can't just slam it to it. A little faster, there it goes. Back and forth, and we're getting dizzy, so okay. But that's it. So hopefully that answers your question. And anything else that you might want to ask, certainly send me a line, put it down below. And please subscribe if you haven't. It helps grow the channel so that I can keep doing more of these for you. And we've got a lot more stuff coming, so stay tuned. Thank you.